All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Next item on the agenda is item 5D, public hearing. Development plan review of an application by K&K Beach Club, LLC, for proposed development of a ground-mounted solar photovoltaic installation located on a portion of the property identified as Tax Assessors Lot 55 on Plat 106, which fronts on West Main Road, Browns Lane, Corporate Place, and Vandercheck Avenue. May I have a motion to open the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded to open the public hearing. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Public hearing is open.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Sean Bouchard. I'm an attorney from the law offices of Silva, Thomas, Martland, and Offenberg. I'm here this evening representing K&K Beach Club, LLC, who are seeking to install a ground-mounted solar array at the property located along West Main Road. The total site is over 70 acres. However, this is only a small portion that will be converted into a solar facility. I believe several members of the board had the ability to attend the site visit where we were able to actually walk the site, see the access road that had been installed, as well as to see the staked portion that was able to represent where the facility will be installed. I'm joined this evening by David Russo from Dupree Engineering. David is the lead engineer for this project, and he will be providing a fairly thorough analysis and explanation as to what the project entails. I do also have Scott Milnes from Equinox Renewables, Inc., who is the company who will be actually responsible for the project. So with that, I'd ask that Mr. Russo be brought up, sworn in, and provide his testimony related to this project.
Good evening. My name is David Russo, professional engineer with Dupree Engineering. So the lot is AP 106, lot 55. The owner is K&K Beach Club, LLC, and the total area of the lot is 71.19 acres. We have completed a full Class 1 survey of the entire property that Dupree Engineering has. And the lot zoning is GBA, general business. A biologist from Dupree Engineering.
Talk more closely into the microphone, please.
A biologist from our company has flagged the wetlands on the site, and those are out in the field. That was completed prior to submitting to DEM. One of the review comments through the town process, Crossman Engineering, the town engineer, wanted us to double check those locations and survey them, which we have done, and the flags in the field within the area of the road and the solar field are all surveyed and located on the plan. The applicant's seeking a 1 megawatt ground-mounted solar array. This is located at the southern portion of the property. The access will be off of Corporate Place. When we looked at this site before we went to DM, the first thing we looked at was just reducing the amount of disturbance and reducing the amount of any need for impervious area or additional pervious area. So we're utilizing the existing road in the middle as it crosses through that wetland, so that's an existing crossing. And then the new roads that we're proposing are proposed to be built with crushed stone, which will promote infiltration. It'll actually add storage to the area. It'll capture that storm water, and we've designed it in the contractor to pitch it towards the wetland as it discharges it. We have received a DM permit. Part of that DM permit review was DM did go to the site. We also were required to prepare a soil erosion and maintenance plan, which is for construction, for sediment control, a silt fence or silt socks when they're putting in the solar system in the rear. That's mainly to protect the wetland areas, which are shown in green on the plan that is in front of you. The applicant has requested a waiver for overhead utilities because the utility national grid dictates the overhead utilities coming into the site. So the utilities be coming off Corporate Place, up that driveway, and then we have an existing wetland crossing. So when we talked to DEM preferred that we take that overhead past that wetland existing crossing. Otherwise, it'd be a lot more disturbance in that wetland area to put it on the ground. So We're requesting a waiver, and we're proposing, once we get over that wetland area, to go underground as soon as possible after that area. But most of that's been dictated by National Grid and DEM. The hydrology on this and the from a stormwater. Yep.
Can you identify that just on the map? Can you walk over and identify the overhead?
Yes.
I know I'm just having,
So the overhead's going to run here along the shoulder,
Right.
along the existing road. And then once it gets over outside the jurisdiction of the wetland, in this area, we're proposing to go underground there. So
Okay.
we're trying to avoid any above ground utility poles over here.
Do we have the handout?
very well, thank you.
In terms of the hydrology and stormwater on this site, we're not changing the ground cover type at all. The solar panels will be installed on the existing similar type ground cover that's out there today. That grass will be mowed and maintained. That's part of there's an operation and maintenance plan for the solar field. So they'll have to go out there periodically, mow that grass, also do an electrical inspection of the system. So that'll be periodic maintenance that's required. The fire department has reviewed this. The existing roadway that crosses the wetland is slightly narrower than their minimum requirement. So they have asked us to put a non-combustible, I'll call it ring, around the fence. So if there was ever to a fire, there'd be a non-combustible 10-foot strip around the fence line that should contain it within the fence. So we've agreed to do that. We're proposing that with probably more crushed stone or some type of gravel mix along the boundary of the solar site. There are existing residential homes located to the southwest. They're visible on the plan, and our landscape architect, Alex Avery, has prepared a plan. She's completed a site inspection and determined there's some areas that are scarce. So she's proposing the plantings. It's a mixture of spruce, pine, and cedar trees in those areas. We realize the sensitive nature of the visual buffer that's going to be required, so the applicant has agreed that after planting or during construction, while those are planted, if there's more planting that the town feels needed, the applicant will go ahead and do that.
Let me ask you this question here. Have you seen the comments from the tree commission with regard to the screening?
I have not. I noticed it in the meeting notes, agenda notes that get handed out, but I didn't have the.
Well, in essence, they say that if the residents across the street are satisfied with the screening, that's okay. So, and based on your comment about them, about the applicants coming back to plant more trees, I assume that they're okay with that recommendation from the tree commission.
Yes.
Okay. I'd like that added as a condition, though.
It's on the list.
Okay.
Yep.
And lastly, just from a service perspective on this site, the solar field doesn't require any type of, there's no sewer service, there's no water service, there's no proposed wells or septic systems. So, and in terms of traffic, obviously it's not a high traffic generating facility. Following construction, you get a periodic maintenance vehicle out there to inspect the system. That's a general summary of the site. Be happy to answer any questions the board may have.
Any questions from members of the planning board?
I have one. I'm just curious, do you have any written information from DEM that we could see about the flora in the area, if there's anything specific that was designated as being special or whatever?
We have a DEM, what's called a DEM insignificant alteration approval.
Yeah.
Part of that review includes sensitive species. They look at natural heritage areas, which define if there's a sensitive species or plant type. So that's part of that review. Nothing came back from DEM as part of the review. And we're not proposing to remove any vegetation. There might be a little bit of trimming along the bridge that gets over the wetland for access, but we're not proposing to cut any significant amount of vegetation with this.
I assume they used a biologist for this too.
The biologist from Dupree Engineering flagged all the wetlands, correct? It was a combination, yep.
Question? Question, thank you. The DEM was an insignificant alteration, I understand that. Was there any feedback on the fact that the overhead line, the lines are remaining overhead, they did not want any disturbance within the wetlands, or could you have done that? Because that's my only hook on this, is the overhead lines. We have to grant a waiver for that request, but did DEM have any?
This is preferred. I mean, when you go to DM with any application, the first thing they're looking for is minimizing impacts and disturbance. Right. And when we went to DM, that was one of they were looking at that. So it's definitely, in terms of lower impact, preferred route with DEM. Otherwise, to do a crossing in that area could create a lot of disturbance.
So in your experience, if you had to go underground to comply with the waiver, what kind of a burden would that be to the applicant, to you?
It would trigger an application to alter, which could take up to 12 months to receive. There's a lot more high-level materials you have to submit as part of that. And the fees are higher for it also.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments from board members?
I have one. To service the solar arrangement, do you have an estimate on how many vehicles will be going over that wetland crossing on a monthly or semi-annual basis approximately?
I'd say I would put an estimate around once a month.
Oh, okay.
It's probably a, average. If there's problems, they'd have to go back more frequently, but I'd say once a month is probably an average. And that would more be for the maintenance of the electrical. Typically the grass, they'll cut it, 3-4 times during the year, depending on the growth season.
Other comments from the board? Do you have more to?
I just had two clarifying questions that I would want to ask. So when we're talking about the overhead lines going over the wetland, from DEM's perspective, that is a better outcome for the wetland itself, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And then in terms of the fencing around the array itself, could you just describe that briefly?
Sure. The fencing around the array will be a 6-foot-high fence. DM requires us to lift it off the ground so that small critters can pass through the system. And there'll be a gate at the entrance of the solar system. That'll have a Knox lock with your fire department, so they have access to the facility.
I have no other questions.
I've got a question. It's kind of an unusual name, K&K Beach Club. Did they purchase that property, or are they leasing it?
I'm sorry, say that again?
Did they buy that property from the current owner, or are they leasing the property?
Unfortunately, I'm covering for David Martland this evening. He would have a better input as to the ownership of it. But my understanding is I believe that K&K is the owner of the property itself.
All right, thank you.
Any other comments from the board? Comments from the public? Is there anyone like, please? State your name and address, please.
My name is Mike Budzik. I live at 107 Corbett Place, one of the houses abutting that property. Can we get that map back up? I'd like to talk about something specific.
It's not working? Did you?
System went down. Technology at its best.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's not working
Do
apparently.
you have a map you could show us, maybe?
Yeah.
All right, I would think, if you take a look at the two houses where they show brush, they're going to put in some,
Page
I guess,
4.
trees.
You want page 4?
Yeah.
Yep. Looks like page 4.
You have two houses. Pretty inconvenient, these things don't work. Here, where they show, you got several houses where they show where they're going to plant trees. In particular, I live in 107 Corbett Place, and I'm taking a look at that, and they don't show any trees being planted there. I know they said that they would look at adding trees. I'd like a commitment. If you look at this area back here, which they said their tree person went to look at, they should at least probably come take a look at it, because those aren't trees. Those are weeds. And some of the trees they're so old, they're rotten. They fell down, they got vines growing on them. It's awful. It doesn't do anything to block anything, I know.
It will be a condition of what happens this evening, but I would like you to come up and repeat the commitment that you mentioned before.
There's two things on that I can add. One is, as he stated, if there's not enough vegetation in that area, and I just wanted to ask for the record, are you talking about this area? Because I couldn't see where you're pointing.
Yes, I am. Yep.
Okay. As stated, the applicant is committed to, if the town feels more plantings necessary, to put those in. The other comment is that maintenance that's going to be required for the field also overlaps to this visual buffer. So that visual buffer needs to be maintained for the life of the solar. If a plant dies, you're going to have to maintain that. So that'll be part of, and I believe it's a condition of approval in front of the board tonight. So that will be maintained.
So, let me understand this. So the diagram reflects where new vegetation is going to be planted, and if the planning board feels more vegetation is needed, then that decision will be made then?
The recommendation of the tree commission was that if the residents are satisfied, that's what the applicant should do, is satisfy the residents.
Okay, is there a plan on having them come and talk to the residents to see if they're satisfied?
Well, isn't it, in one of the conditions of approval, it says, at the time of construction, the vegetative screening along the southern boundary line shall be inspected to ensure compliance with screening requirements. Additional plantings shall be installed as necessary to achieve compliance. So I'm not sure who's the inspector's going to be.
Well, and then in addition to that, the maintenance plan that's required to be filed annually would require making sure that it's still compliant. So there is a check and balance. Granted, it's annually, but that's the standard. I think that means.
Do you want to comment, Sean?
Yeah, I do want to just clarify. On the plan, obviously, we're showing the areas where there is a complete lack of buffer, which is why those are highlighted. But obviously, that buffering requirement is not limited to the areas that are circled there, right? That does apply to the entire length of the property line. So our obligations when it comes to kind of reinforcing the existing natural buffer that's there, that is part of that condition as well. So obviously, we're showing just areas that need to specifically be completely built out, but that's not the limit of the installation. It does also require, like you said, if some of those trees are falling, right, or rotted out, we would have an obligation to reinforce that screening with additional plantings to maintain the buffer for all the properties along that.
Thanks. Thank you very much. But where's the commitment for that? Right now, I'm having to maintain part of that property because the owner doesn't do it. That stuff is grown in my yard. I had a tree fall in my yard and nobody came to fix it. So this needs to be taken care of. I mean, it sounds to me like they're interested, but I would think they'd need to meet with the residents, go back there, walk the area, and tell us what they're going to do. And that would make us happy. But reading the guidelines, you drive a truck through those guidelines. I'm not too sure they're very specific.
Well, the recommendation that we pass will include all of the conditions that are on this memo, including making sure that they are in compliance with screening and maintaining it.
So maybe the clarification you're looking for is once it leaves here, where does it go? The decision gets written, recorded, and then we all go away, but then Ron, maybe you can explain the town process beyond that.
Yeah, so, well, I guess kind of backing up, the purpose of this meeting tonight is the development plan review, the planning board's review results, and a recommendation to the zoning board of review, which will be considering the special use permit. If the project is approved and the planning board's conditions are attached to that approval, the special use permit approval, then it's a zoning requirement. If in the future the landscaping is not maintained, that becomes a zoning violation and the town can enforce it.
Well, that's good. So if we add words to extend this brush, I guess, this new vegetation.
Could you stay at the microphone? We won't be able to record your voice if you're not at the mic.
Just pointing to where there's a hole right there in the back. I know what's back there. It's rotten trees. It's a bunch of scrub brush. It's raspberry bushes which are growing into my yard. I have to maintain that stuff. So I would think if they included that in their plan to get rid of that stuff and plant some, you know, barrier trees, I think that would be acceptable. And that's why I'm here. Just want to make sure that I'm covered.
Yeah, I think I can address a little bit more now that I think we're clear on where we stand. So first of all, we have no objection to item 3, which is one of the conditions of the approval, which I think we've just referred to, that we would have to maintain the vegetative screening as well as have it inspected at the time of approval to make sure that you know, we are in fact properly screening. If it would help, you know, we can certainly have that updated to indicate that that inspection is done by the zoning official at the time that, you know, the construction's completed. I think that is something we could certainly do. We have no objection to having that included not only on, you know, your approval this evening, but also as a condition on any zoning relief that we would ultimately receive in front of the zoning board. The other thing that I would certainly ask, and I've just talked to Preet, the landscape architect who has put together these plans can certainly meet you on site at your property to walk along and identify specific areas that, you know, it sounds like some of the trees may be dying and potentially have them removed. So if that's something that we want to schedule kind of between now and the zoning board to have the opportunity for you to meet with the landscape architect and have that incorporated into a plan, I think that's something we could certainly do. So
that okay?
we would have no objection to that.
Okay. So item 3 currently talks about screening at time of construction, but it really does not address maintenance. Could we modify that one to include maintenance?
You can add that language, sure. It's required, I guess, by the fact that it's part of the development plan that they need to maintain it, but we can clarify that and make sure that everyone understands that it's got to be maintained over time.
Okay.
Yeah, so we would have no objection to having that written as for the life of the project.
Sounds fine.
So my question is the zoning official going to be the inspector to make sure that number 3 is complied with?
Yeah, I mean, he is by default, because like Ron said, the process is it goes back to the zoning board.
Right.
And it becomes a zoning matter if they become in violation, and that's the responsibility of the zoning officer to enforce that. So you have another bite at the apple for sure, and make sure you attend that hearing and put your feelings out there. I'm sure they'll address the language issues, but you'll have another public hearing, right, with the zoning board, and you'll have a chance to be heard again and get it on the record with them that you have concerns, and they represented here that they're willing to work with you, so I'm comfortable with that language and that condition.
Okay. Yeah, don't get me wrong. I think this is a great project compared to a Target or a Walmart or something. One other thing, I participated in that site visit, and from what I understand is there'll be no noise from any transformers or anything?
They generate noise, but at your property line, they won't be above the threshold. So they do generate.
Could you repeat the comment into the microphone, please? So we can hear you.
So the inverter that we have on the sites is 55 decibels at 10 feet from the inverter. And then looking at the property line, that drops to, when you get to the property line, it drops to about 30 decibels, which is basically a library or a whisper noise.
Does that answer your question?
And they don't generate noise at night. So at night, they're shut off because nothing's running. So it's only during the day that they're running. Here's my business card to set up everything.
Oh, okay.
I'm going on vacation. I can't be available those days. If you want to email me, and I'll set up something with the landscape architect.
Any other comments?
I think that's all I have.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else from the public who would like to speak on this? We have a motion to close the public hearing.
Motion to close the public hearing?
Second.
Motion's made and seconded to close the public hearing. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Public hearing is closed. May I have a motion for a favorable recommendation to grant the waiver, include the 6 conditions and the 5 findings in the memo?
And if I might, I have one additional condition which the applicant is aware of. Condition number 7 would be that the fees for the review of the application by the town's consulting engineer must be paid prior
Yes.
to
Okay.
permitting.
Okay, so to grant the waiver, and include the 6 conditions and the 5 required findings.
I'll
7 conditions.
Number 7.
7 conditions.
Yes.
I'll move that motion. Was there a modification, though, to item number 3? Are we changing language in 3?
So what I picked up on is the language would be changed to add property line shall be inspected by the zoning official, and that the project will achieve compliance with the landscaping plan for the life of the project.
Yes.
Okay,
That'd be the motion, yes.
okay. Do I have a motion?
Yes. Well, that's what I moved, yeah.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. The motion passes. Next item on the agenda is, give me a minute. Item 6A, public hearing, development plan review for an application of SKN Associates LLC, Napa, proposed development of a 4,900 square foot addition to an existing commercial building located on property at 15 Valley Road and identified as tax assessors Lot 35 on Plat 107 NE.
Oh, cool, okay.
You again.
I know, long time no see. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Sean Bouchard, an attorney from the law offices of Silva, Thomas, Martland, and Offenburg, here this evening representing SKN Associates LLC, who are the owners of the real estate at 15 Valley Road, which I think we're more familiar with as the current Napa Auto Parts. I'm joined this evening by Mike Russell, who's the lead engineer for this project, who's going to be providing us with some overview of the proposed alterations to the site. I do have Brian Shull from Cordston Design, who is the architect for the design of this project. The solar facility just went a little bit quicker than we thought it would. He is planning on being here around 6:45 to 7 o'clock. So he will be in attendance. He just may be a couple minutes late. But for the introduction to this project, what you'll see is a extension to the existing facility. If you've driven by this site, you would notice that the current Napa Auto Parts has some containers in the back of the property, or I guess in the side of the property, that are currently used for storage of the inventory on site.
Sean, let me interrupt you
Yep.
for a moment. This is a public hearing, and I should have called for a motion to open the public
Fair
hearing.
enough, yes.
So moved.
Also, hold on, also, we want to discuss item 6B at the same time for the purpose of discussion. We will vote on 6A and 6B separately. So may I have a motion to open the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Public hearing is open. Sorry.
Okay, so, as we were discussing previously, the side of the building currently has some containers that are used for storage of inventory. The plan for the proposed addition is to be placed directly over that to expand the existing facility to allow for some additional storage of inventory for the Napa Auto Parts store. There's no additional retail space dedicated to this property. It is simply for inventory purposes. The reason that there are 2 different items before you this evening on this agenda, one is for the development plan review process. The other is that there is a very small portion of the site or of the building touches the Zone 1 watershed, and so it has triggered the Zone 1 special use permit as well. This project has already been before the Conservation Commission and has received a positive recommendation. But to give you some more detail and oversight as to kind of what is occurring here, I would ask that Mike Russell come forward and provide you with a more detailed understanding of what the proposal is.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, Mike Russell, for the record, on behalf of the applicant. just to give you a general site overview beyond what Mr. Bouchard had explained, our office was tasked with surveying the property and then preparing the site plan and permitting associated with that. As far as site plans go, this is very minimal and nondescript. But because of its location, it necessitated a number of permits at the state level and also the local level. Ron, can you go to sheet 4? Okay, I believe the board members have reduced copies, so if you can't see that, a lot of the improvements, as I mentioned, are minimal, but they're in very close proximity to the addition. So the building addition is 70 by 70, 4,900 square feet. As Mr. Bouchard mentioned, it adjoins the existing building, and it's essentially an extension on the northerly elevation. Because of its proximity to the street frontage or the easterly property line, zoning relief is needed for a front yard setback. Additionally, there's some screening, evergreen screening on the property that has to get relocated. So a physical alteration permit with DOT was necessary as part of this redevelopment to relocate that planting. There are no other alterations proposed to the state right-of-way. As you can see, there's a vegetated buffer or a maintained grass area in front of the building to the edge of pavement. That's actually state property. So it's a variable width state right-of-way in this location. So the building gets kind of an enhanced buffer through the state property. We had to go to DEM for a couple of reasons. One, the proximity of the activity relative to Bailey's Brook, which is a 200-foot waterfront, 200-foot riverfront zone there. There's a portion of the building, as you can see by the delineated boundaries there, that are within that. It's about 170 feet from its closest point. So there's been a series of applications to DEM for various activities on this site over the years, most recently 2010, which they received an insignificant alteration. But for this activity, it was essentially an exchange of the existing pavement that's there that Mr. Bouchard mentioned. They have some containers outside for roof area. There's an increase in impervious area of roughly 700 square feet. And any impervious area that's outside of this footprint is proposed to be removed down to its subbase and replaced with loam and seed landscaping. So we want to minimize the area of disturbance because of its location in a sensitive environmental area. DEM issued an insignificant alteration permit for this to account for the additional impervious area. We had to make a slight modification to the existing detention facility.
Take the mic with you, please.
Which is located here. For any of the board members that have done a site visit here, this is enclosed in a chain link fence. So we're exchanging paved area for roof area. We don't need any pre-treatment for that. It's worked out with DEM, so we're going to hard pipe the roof runoff directly into the pond as to not mix with the pavement, to improve water quality, and to mitigate this additional area, we have to modify the basin outlet slightly to raise it to add for water quality and also mitigate the rate and volume generated for the site. So there's no other site improvements outside of the footprint. So we're maintaining the existing drainage patterns, which are basically across the site from north to south, running through the paved area. This existing gravel area, which is you probably noticed it's retained by a block retaining wall, a landscape wall, pitches back towards the access area, and it's directed to the pond. All of the flow here is sheet flow, so by raising that outlet, it gives us additional water quality, and then you have roughly 150 feet of vegetated buffer from the outlet to Bailey's Brook. So as I mentioned, DEM issued an insignificant alteration permit for this application. The building addition does not necessitate any additional parking. They have more than ample parking for the existing use plus the addition. So as such, we had to request a number of waivers in the development plan review process. Most of the commercial design standards best apply to new construction, new developments. So for these redevelopments, a lot of times they're not fitting, or it's hard to comply there. We met with Mr. Wolanski and the technical review committee to go through that. So if the board has, I believe you have a letter from me and also a staff report, if the board would like to go through those very quickly. From the landscaping section 521.3, we're requesting relief from the vegetated buffer. As I mentioned, we're right against the property line, the easterly property line here, but you have, we're replanting some screening that's along that building's edge, and you also have a buffer, an existing buffer, to the edge of pavement from Valley Road that's actually on state property. Because there's no other improvement within the parking area around the site, we're asking for relief for tree planting, 521 3F, and the remainder of the waivers involve the building. So as you know, this building the existing building was built in 1995, and so it's kind of follows a corporate model for Napa. The addition would follow the same. Mr. Scholl's here. He can speak to the architectural elements, both exterior and interior, but there are 4 waivers there with respect to architecture, windows and doors, materials, roof forms, and roof design, and general architectural elements, which I'll let him speak to. We did have to appear before the Conservation Commission because of the proximity of being in the Watershed Protection District and the proximity to the Bailey's Brook. This plan was presented. We did have DOT approval and DEM approval at that time. I believe that the Conservation Commission endorsed the project, made a positive recommendation to the Planning Board and Zoning Board. So that is the general overview of the site, and as I mentioned, there's very little going on here in the way of a site design, but I'll happy to entertain any questions the board members might have.
Mr. Chairman, I would say that although there's 11 waivers, they seem to be common sense and applicable to the application. So I would support them.
Other comments from the board? Bill? Sorry.
No, I'll wait until we,
All right.
no questions, no questions really.
Well, obviously, I'm going to ask about the trees, because I think that some trees and vegetation should be provided, the landscape buffer. That's just my personal opinion.
Actually, I do have a question, now that I think of it.
Are you all done?
I'm sorry
Yes,
to be
thank you.
going back and forth between the development plan review and the recommendation. Zoning board, you have our recommendation relative to the zoning board on this. Are you getting variances from the zoning board?
Yes.
Can you tell me what they are?
Well, there's 2 different things going on. I can let Sean speak to that.
Yeah, I'll just answer quickly. So there's 2 pieces. There's the special use permit related to the Zone 1. There's also a variance, as you can likely see, from the property line being essentially on the edge of the building. So we are asking for a front yard variance related to the extension of the building to be, I believe it's just over a foot.
Is that it? Are those
are the only items of relief related to zoning, yes.
That's fine.
Is that your question?
That was my question, yes.
Any other comments from the board members?
Well,
John?
I assume the color's going to match the Napa blue.
Yeah, I do have Brian Shull who can talk about the architecture, yeah. Yeah,
Other
I do
comments?
have just a kind of follow-up for Mr. Russell real quick.
Well, I have some questions
okay.
myself.
All right, yeah.
Okay. I too was surprised to see 11 waivers requested, but after reading through things, I only have questions on 2 of them. First one is on the first waiver request on exterior lighting fixtures. Why are you asking the waiver for that? That they be dark sky compliant?
Are we,
Which one are we, sorry.
are we asking for that? I don't-
Where are we referring to? I know we had submitted a letter.
I'm looking at the first waiver request that's on the memo that I have. Applicant must confirm that exterior lighting fixtures are dark sky compliant, or a waiver must be requested.
So if you can confirm that you're going to be using dark sky compliant fixtures, then you don't need the waiver. That was a question from the reviewing the plan.
Yeah,
It wasn't clear.
Yeah, that's our intention, but.
Your intention is to use dark sky compliant fixtures?
Correct, lighting,
Okay.
yes.
That goes away?
Yeah. you don't
One
need
goes
that
away,
one.
it sounds like?
And my other question goes to number 6, the use of exterior building materials not consistent with traditional materials. I know the building that you have now is a standard metal warehouse-type structure. But this is an opportunity to upgrade your facility to be more compliant with the town's requirements. And I'm wondering if the applicant would be willing to put some siding up on the front and the street sides of the building.
So, can you just clarify in terms of the siding you're asking for?
Well, as you know, the ordinances call for traditional siding. They mention clapboard, brick, whatever. And the planning board has allowed substitute materials that resemble those types of materials. And I'm wondering if your applicant could take this opportunity to upgrade their facility to be more compliant with those traditional materials. And I would be okay if they did just the front of the building and the street side. They don't have to do all 4 sides.
All right. If you give me a second to get back to you, I'll have a better answer for that.
Sure thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm asking.
I do have Ken Benson, who's actually the representative for the owner, so he might be able to provide a little more insight into the proposed elevations that we've submitted and what is and is not available in terms of being able to alter the existing building as well as the extension.
Good evening.
State your name and...
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Kenneth Ben Benson for SKN Associates. We actually are going to be trying to keep the same metal skin is what the original plan is calling for. We actually were planning on changing the color of the building to be a little bit softer. They have a new retail initiative and signage national program that Napa offers, and it's actually a very, very light gray and also a deeper blue stripe, which I'd be happy to provide like a Photoshop rendering. We're also going to be reducing our signage. I don't know if you're familiar with the long yellow pipeline that goes along the building on 2 of the sides. That will be removed. and we will just have the Napa Auto Parts signage that you see, and it will be in an LED. So I'd be happy to maybe provide a rendering, and it might be softer to the eye than the metal skin that you see. It still will be metal skin, but the color scheme might be more in line with what the town is looking for. To change the front facade of the building could be extremely cost prohibitive for, we are an independent business trying to get a loan. So we'd be happy to look into that cost and see if it's possible, but I can't make any promises.
So, yeah, I'd like to see that. I'll speak to that. I'm struggling to support putting a similar size building, and frankly, it's almost doubling the size, and I'm glad to see you're doing well, but I'm having a hard time supporting putting basically a second building there, the same facade. I empathize with you on cost of what those materials are, but I mean, that's a big building now, and the vertical metal, blue, yellow striped siding, granted you might change some of that color and striping, but boy, I like Paul's suggestion. I'd like to see you come back with some type of a, something that we can work with. I'm just struggling with trying to support this. So I think you need to, my personal opinion, before I really support that, is to come back with, think what Paul said and know that I support that, some type of a traditional material, considering the scale of it, and that's a word we use here pretty often. I think a better effort could be made, should be made, and I appreciate it.
The only other thing I do want to point out in connection with just the facade you're looking at, the elevations don't show the trees that will be planted in front.
I understand.
Right? So there are trees going in front that will break up the facade to some extent, and obviously they'll grow over time. But the reason that we're asking, and just very quickly to the point about having the trees, we do have to ask for that buffer waiver because they're not technically on site. They have to be placed off site, and we do have authority to do that from DOT. So that's why it comes across that way. So, they're not superimposed in front of the building, so that may be something we should do as well to hopefully assist in providing a better understanding of what your facade will look like long term, instead of simply seeing the width of the building.
Yeah, I think it would be good to get some better views of this new color scheme that you have in mind. And I would also request that you consider some way of bringing a more traditional finish to the building. I made one suggestion, but, architects are very clever and engineers are very clever, so they might be able to come up with something that is much more traditional looking. You have this opportunity for doing it now, to bring the whole thing into something that is more traditional for the town.
Maybe breaking up the roof line in some capacity. I mean, we get, I just think a better attempt, and I'm sure we'll work with you on it, but, and I think maybe the renderings, when you come back with a, good color version, show the trees, show us a nice pretty picture, maybe break up the roof line, show some maybe traditional materials, maybe not on the whole building. I guess we could say, let's put lipstick on a pig kind of thing, but respectfully, I mean that with your building.
Be a little creative.
Kind of our life's work, so I appreciate you clarifying that comment. I don't know if you've driven by, but we have planted quite a few trees in front of the containers, and they are. Our goal is not to show off this extension. It's strictly for warehouse use. And being lifelong residents of the island and staunch supporters locally, I understand. I want to try and make it so that the town appreciates our business.
I would suggest even maybe some even false windows, break it up with, you don't need to have the windows seeing through, but you certainly could put some type of a false window effect. There are ways, I think, to do this.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for considering that.
So, I think to clarify, at this point, our architect is here. I think he's heard some of the comments that potentially we can try and rework into the building as possible. Obviously, there are financial constraints that you run into if we're talking about redoing both the existing facility as well as the extension, if we're talking about roof lines or anything like that. So we will certainly take the comments into consideration, do what we can to try, as you said, put lipstick on a pig a little bit to make this a little bit more soothing to the eye as best as possible, but there are limitations to what we can and can't do here. But hopefully with the updated color scheme, the rendering, as well as the trees being superimposed in front to give an idea of what we're ultimately going to be looking at will, I think, allow all of us to have a better understanding of what we're doing. So that's certainly something that can be done.
Mr. Chair?
So that's for that.
Yes,
part,
sir.
yeah.
What I propose, we've done this in the past, if we do continue this, probably which we will, if you could come up with something between now and the next meeting and provide it to the planner,
Yeah.
and then the planning board can circulate up there and take a look and that kind of thing. We've done that before.
Right, that's certainly something that we would be looking to do. It wouldn't be sprung on you at the meeting. We'd like to have the opportunity to provide you the time to review before we ultimately appear. So that's certainly something we'll be looking to do.
So will you request a continuation of this then to?
Certainly, and just before I do, I did want to make like one final point with Mike Russell, that this did also go through technical review committee review and approval. There were comments made by Crossman Engineering, and ultimately I just wanted Mike to identify what those comments were and how they were rectified.
Certainly. So there was a discrepancy between the plans of in question and the plans that were being reviewed by Crossman, and largely they were looking at a previous version of the plans, which their 90% of their comments were associated with. So once they got the improved plans, we addressed each one of their comments. As we met a technical review committee, they had no further comment, that they were satisfied with that. They had a couple of conditions that regarding the detention basin, as it's overgrown, that the contractor, the site contractor awarded whoever's awarded the project shall scarify the bottom of that basin and cut some of that overgrowth down, and that as part of our long-term operation and maintenance plan, that the applicant maintain that basin so that it functions properly.
Sounds good.
Just,
Hold on, BJ?
I'm sorry, PJ.
No.
So just a couple of final comments from me. Just for the record, I do support a positive recommendation to the zoning board for the expansion and under the special use permit. And the development plan review, not so much at this point, but I do support the expansion based on on that end of it. And Ron, the development plan review, if for some reason we can't come to an agreement, we end up denying this, does this kill the project?
No, it would be a recommendation to the zoning board.
Still a recommendation?
Yeah.
Right, okay, thank you.
Well, if you're going to continue it, we're not going to vote on it.
No, I'm just, that was, I want them to know, I think we support much of it, but.
Yeah.
Right, and I would ask, just for clarification from the board, if you had any other questions moving forward for Mr. Russell, I'd rather not have to bring him back for a second meeting if we're comfortable with his testimony. And that way it would simply be myself, Ken, and Mr. Shull.
Any of you have further questions?
Okay.
I'm good with
Good?
it.
Yeah, I think I'm all set.
Okay. I do have Brian Shull here, who is the architect associated with this project. I know obviously he's heard the comments from the board. Not sure how productive it would be for you to ask any additional questions, since this is likely to be revised in some form or fashion. But if you did have any questions for him, he's happy to at least answer them at this time before we ask for the continuance.
Well,
It is a public meeting, too.
yeah,
Yeah.
no, I understand. Yeah. I understand. No, as long as you come back with some renderings and put some good ideas into it, I'm content at this point. Others okay? This is a public meeting. I guess we will continue the public meeting to the next.
Yeah,
one.
if you're going to continue the hearing, you would leave the
Keep it
public
open.
hearing open, yeah.
Yeah. But let me ask, is there anyone in the public who wants to comment today? No. So
All
may
right.
I?
So, yeah, at this time, given the comments from the board, we would ask for a 1-month continuance to the next planning meeting with the understanding that we'll be prepared to present at that time and have simply the updated architectural renderings for you to hopefully have that be the final meeting.
That would be great.
I'll make
Can
that
I have a
motion.
motion,
to
we have a
continue?
motion to
Second.
continue this to the May 8th meeting?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
Thank you, guys.
The item is continued. Thank you.
Very interesting.
Item 6B goes along with 6A.
Yes.
So at this point, we move to item 6C. A request of the Zoning Board of Review for review and recommendation on an application of Leon Pantaleos for a special use permit to construct an accessory ground-mounted solar photovoltaic system in Zone 1 of the Watershed Protection District on property located at 560 Quidneck Avenue, Assessors Plat 114, Lot 115.
Mary Beth, you going to present?
Is there no one here?
Apparently, the applicant is not here.
I will accept a motion to continue this.
So moved.
Second.
Motion is made and seconded to continue this item to the May 8th meeting. Is there any discussion?
Well, if the
All
guy
those in
doesn't...
favor say aye.
No, I have,
Oh, I'm sorry.
if this guy doesn't have enough energy to come here for the meeting tonight, I think he should reapply.
We don't know the circumstances.
Well, yeah.
I
let's
was
give him- let's give
informed
him
there's
one
only
chance.
2 items on tonight, so I suspect there may be some other communication that may have happened if this was a 3rd item. Just before making such a
Yeah, let's give him,
Yeah,
drastic or...
let's give it,
Benefit of the doubt.
let's continue it and see what happens.
Gotta be tough.
See if we can find
Benefit
out.
of the doubt.
We're tough on the Southern River.
We have a motion to continue this to the May 8th meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The item is continued to the May 8th meeting. The next item is all under updates. 7A is the status report on planning board action items. This is something that you all could read before you came to the meeting. Are there any comments on this item? For the benefit of the new members, this is just a way that the planning board is keeping track of things that we've acted on, and some are still in the works, and we just keep track of them this way. Okay, item 7B, a status report on comprehensive plan implementation. This makes reference to a memo that the planning board first received way back when I first came on the board, and we've been moving forward on these items. This memo presents a status report on each one. Some of them have been completed, some are in process, and some are about to be in process. Are there any comments on this item?
Nice comprehensive list, Ron, thank you.
Thank you. I'll keep both lists, I'll keep them updated on a monthly basis, and you'll be able to track where things are.
It's helpful, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, now before we go on to item, 7C, I'm assuming there's no...
Nothing new.
Yeah, so, all right, so before we go on to 7D, we have a number of administrative things to deal with since it's essentially a new board. We've had election of officers. We have been meeting on the second Wednesday of each month at 6 p.m. And I would like to affirm that we should keep meeting on the second Wednesday at 6 p.m. Is that in agreement with everybody? I know some people have raised the issue of starting earlier, but earlier is difficult for people who work.
Start at 5?
Yeah, that was proposed.
Well, we used to start at 7.
Yeah, we used to start.
200 years ago, we started at 7.
I remember that.
Yes, we started.
Then we
at
moved it
7.
back because a lot of people went to bed at 9, so we moved it back to 6. So 6, it
And
seems
also
pretty good.
Ron has to
Yeah.
drive back to
People-
Kentucky, so I mean, we partially for that reason,
Yeah.
too.
Yeah, I don't,
You know, we're caring.
6 o'clock, okay? 5 o'clock?
I don't mind going to 5, I mean, but
How do you feel, Ron?
I think 5 is probably too early, like Paul said. You've got, it's not only board members, you've got applicants and members of the public that would like to attend public hearings. I think
that's
5
true.
is
6
too early.
probably good. I mean,
Keep it at 6.
Joe, do you have a comment?
I'm fine with 6 o'clock.
Okay, why don't we retain second Wednesdays at 6 o'clock?
Okay.
Now, we also, at one time, had an additional meeting that I think we were doing the fourth Monday of each month. Is that something the planning board wants to do? To set aside the fourth Monday of each month and fill
Well,
it as necessary?
I think we need to take that out of the picture and be more flexible now, because we're meeting other deadlines sooner. So we might have to wait a whole month to do something that maybe we can get done in between.
yeah, we tried to do that, and I think because like Art said, we've got other deadlines to meet, we've moved. I don't think we've actually had a supplemental meeting on those dates, maybe once or twice this past year, so I think that's probably wise.
We have been doing things, getting things done.
Oh, yeah.
But the burden's been on Ron to schedule all of these special meetings that we have. And by having a preset meeting, it might ease that burden a little bit. So that's why I put it on the table, see what people think.
You okay with that, Ron? Does it
fine.
make it any easier for you to know that there's a supplemental? I mean, you still have to kind of ask if we're in, but
Right, but we wouldn't have to do the doodle polling thing with all the various dates. If we know that there's a set time each month that if necessary, we've got a supplemental meeting, that would be easier.
yeah, see, that's kind of why we did. I know we didn't meet, we only met maybe twice last year on the supplemental time, but I think it's easier for scheduling for Ron. We set it aside in our calendars now, the fourth Monday, or whatever it is. I think we did it at 5 o'clock actually, just to make it a little bit more palatable for us.
Yeah. Well, that's actually a good time, because it's like the halfway point between our
Yeah.
previous and the
Yeah.
next one coming.
Right, that's how we picked it the first
Yeah,
time.
Yeah.
All right, why don't we do that? Let's set the fourth Monday, 5 o'clock, as a supplementary planning board meeting, agenda to be determined.
Pizza supplied by the town administrator.
Just to clarify, I was wrong. It wasn't, it was that, we actually scheduled that for 4 o'clock. We don't need to stay there, but that's what we put it as. I'm willing to go to 5, but I represented it was 5. It's really 4 is what we set it at.
It's up to
I
the
think
board.
that's right. So what do people prefer? 4 or 5?
I'm flexible.
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 Well, if we're going to have meetings like that, I think 5 is probably better, again, to meet the general
Public.
public
Yeah.
requirement.
Let's keep it at 5 o'clock.
For the supplemental meeting, 5.
Okay, now, we also need to schedule an orientation meeting for the planning board since we have new members. Have you talked with the solicitor about that, Ron?
Not about specific dates, but I think
But he
we had
expects
talked,
to do it.
previously we had talked about the need for this additional orientation
We
meeting.
should do that sooner rather than later. I mean, I think the sooner we get the new members, give them this orientation, the better off the board will be,
Yep.
and they will be. Do we know when Mike is going to be back?
He's actually progressing well, from what I heard. He might have even been okay to come tonight. He was kind of on the border, so I think he's going to be good pretty soon.
Could I ask you to check with him and see when he's available, and then do a doodle poll?
Sure.
And try to schedule it at the earliest possible time.
Yep.
Maybe if he doesn't come in, we'll go to him. Go to his house, have a meeting at his house. If not, that'll make it get better quickly.
He's going to fry pizza.
Yes, to have
Okay,
pizza. Dinner, yes.
we also had a policy to not start deliberating a new application after 9 p.m. Things get, too involved, people get tired and so on. So we put that policy into place, and I'm just wondering if people would like to continue that policy, or,
I would.
yes?
I think it's a good idea.
Yes, yes, okay, so we will continue
Start at 6.
that policy. We need a planning board representative to the Conservation Commission. We always turn to the new members for this.
Eyes left.
Mike's not here, so that's even worse.
Sign me up.
Mike's not here, that's even worse. Sometimes
So,
you don't show up.
Joe will be the new planning board representative to the Conservation Commission. I think they meet on Mondays, is that right?
They meet on the, I think it's the second Monday of the month here. I think it's 6 o'clock.
And how do we communicate this to the Conservation Commission? Goes to the town council?
It actually goes to the town council, so you might want to just do a quick vote on that the planning board is recommending that Joe be the planning board's representative to the Conservation Commission.
We have a motion to recommend to the town council that Joe Pyrrhic
Yes.
be named the planning board representative to the Conservation Commission.
Motion made.
Second.
Motion made and second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Congratulations, Joe.
Hey.
What pay raise?
He's going to come off their position. Company car.
And we need a new chairperson for the Rural Village District Subcommittee. The current chair was not reappointed, so we need a new chair.
I'll do it.
Were you working on that?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so let Art become the new chair of that commission. That committee, I'm sorry. I don't think, we don't need a motion.
No.
Are there any other administrative issues that I haven't touched on? Okay. All right, so now we can go down committee reports. I assume we'll get some kind of a report the next time around, Art. Okay. Use table committee, I hear you're doing good things. And
Yeah, we're moving along pretty good.
Our next meeting is scheduled for the 22nd at 3 o'clock. I think I
And-
emailed the three that are on that group.
Yep, I'm also, I think I gave you my date, yeah.
And do you think we'll have something for the next regular meeting?
What does the chairman think?
I'm gonna say no, just to be safe, because, I mean, I think we're doing, I don't think we're rushing. I know we need to get it done, but it's also time consuming, and I wanna make sure.
How about the special meeting after that?
Possible, yes, I'll commit to that, yes.
Okay, so for the special meeting in May. Wait, hold on a second.
The supplementary meeting, I mean,
The supplement, yeah, that's the fourth Monday, hold on.
20th.
I'm going to be
I'm sorry,
away.
the 27th.
Is it the 27th?
It is the 27th.
Yeah, I'm okay then. I'm okay.
The fourth Monday is how we've done it.
So we'll target that meeting for,
Oh, that's
we'll have a
Memorial
draft
Day.
for the planning board to consider at that meeting.
Yeah,
Memorial Day.
why don't we say that meeting will be dedicated to considering, I don't know what state
yeah.
the draft will be in, but
It's Memorial Day.
That's
I'm
Memorial.
not coming in on Memorial Day.
Not gonna happen.
We could do it on well, I was gonna say the Tuesday, but I think that would be a zoning board night then.
29th would be the Wednesday.
Do the 29th.
29th? How does the 29th look for people?
May 29th?
Yeah.
I'm going.
You're not around?
How about the 22nd? That's a,
22nd, I'm not around.
okay.
22nd?
Round it around we go?
I'm not around. I'm out of the country.
Yeah, so we gotta refocus here.
Let's hold off and let things progress,
All right.
and we'll hold off on scheduling something. Tree Commission.
Well, the tree commission is very active, and they're in the next planting phase for Middletown Valley. Solicited grants, and they've put out bids, and I believe that Kempener is one of the ones who will be providing a number of the trees, which is a good idea considering it's sort of Kempener Valley there. They're moving along. They're very active. I think they're one of the most active groups in Middletown, and they all care.
Sure. You all set? Okay. Thank you. Open Space and Fields Committee.
So, yeah, so I'm on that now. Right now, frankly, there's not hardly anything that's of pertinence to what we've done. I've been there for a while. I was
Yeah.
at the last couple of meetings, and there's been nothing relative to planning board stuff. I know Will Cronin is active. I know Ron gets active if necessary. Not much of a committee. Paul just suggested maybe Mike might want to take that on as the liaison. I'm willing to give that up if he wants it.
You're busy.
Yeah, that's fine.
So let's, is this an appointment by the town council? Or is this just a planning board appointment?
I believe that would be also a town council.
May I have a motion
I
then
think so.
to recommend to the town council that Mike Fenton be appointed the planning board representative to Open Space and Fields Committee?
So I don't think that happened last time. I think it came up the planning board.
Yeah, I think so too.
I was just put on it and said, show up. Matt Sullivan did it, and I took it from him, and I just showed up. No one ever told me I should be there from the council.
I don't think the
I'll
planning board
double
has
check that with the clerk, but I think that it may be that the planning board recommended somebody and it just got on the consent calendar for the council and just, it wasn't a big deal.
Okay,
So
fair enough.
I'll check with the clerk, but.
I just don't want to see him have to get interviewed again.
No, it wouldn't be an interview.
That's painful.
That's only for planning board and zoning board. But, yeah, so if the board wants to make that vote now, and then I'll check with the clerk.
So, yeah, we'll make the motion to either appoint or have a recommendation to the town council to appoint Mike Fenton as our representative to open use and space,
Yep.
whichever is appropriate.
I'll make the motion.
Is it seconded?
Second.
Noted that it's not by choice. I'm glad to give it up to share the wealth.
Yeah, that's it, yeah. Motion's made and seconded. Any discussion?
Some people take that differently.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Conservation Commission, you haven't had a chance to attend, so I'm sure you have nothing to report, but we'll see what happens next time. Quidneck Island Planning Commission?
That's Art.
The Quinnipiac Island Planning Commission hosted a forum 2 weeks ago at Community College, looking at primarily affordable housing on the Quinnipiac Island, and tomorrow from 8 to 11, the whole housing issue has been opened up to the state reps will be there and some speakers from appropriate agencies in Providence.
Where is this?
At CCRI.
CCI.
What time?
8 to 11.
8 to 11, sorry.
Okay, the other thing is, quite frankly, the Quinnipiac Island Planning Commission for some time has drifted in search of a mission. And I think I say the collective, we have pinned down a mission. Now, every 10 years, we take a look at our comprehensive plan and renew it. And we said the Westside Master Plan hasn't been reviewed for probably about 15 years. So that's going to be one of the major efforts, is to do an update of the Westside Master Plan, this time to also include the traffic and economic things that might be useful for the three towns.
You know we have this study going on looking at traffic and water quality. So the traffic part of that could feed right into that.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Very good.
So that's kind of where they're going. And I think the other day we had some good questions, and I think this will be useful tomorrow. I'm going to speak on one part, is the dilemma we have in trying to get affordable housing over 10% of Middletown. I think every town has got the same problem.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Upcoming meetings. We talked about scheduling the orientation session. You're going to do a doodle poll. May 1st, we have a public workshop at 6 p.m. on fire protection and historic preservation. Make sure everybody has that on your calendars. And then our regular meeting is May 8th. And
I'll just mention too that I'm still working to finalize the potential special meeting on the Brennan application, which will confirm that before the next regular meeting.
we now have the fourth Monday in April. What is that? It's the fourth
Well,
Monday.
it wouldn't be the fourth Monday in April because you continued that application to the May 8th meeting, so.
We've done doodle poll already. Most of us have replied, I think, to that, no?
Yes, but I haven't heard from everybody, so I can't confirm when that special meeting might be. The two dates that are options at this point are June 5th and June 6th.
There's probably not enough time between now and the fourth Monday in April to announce a meeting and, right? I mean, it's 12 days away.
On what?
On whatever. I mean,
Oh, well, yeah,
if there was-
I guess that's up to you,
Yeah,
but,
well, we don't need to have a meeting.
right.
Okay, we have a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Motion made and second to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion's adjourned.